Okay. Well, very good. So, okay. Well, hello, Esther. Hello, Nick. Good morning. Happy, what day is this? Wednesday. When you're resilient, it doesn't really matter what day it is. No, I'm just joking. Hello. Hello, hello, good morning, happy Wednesday. We are going to get started in just another few minutes. We are live right now, though, so this is actually streaming onto Instagram and onto LinkedIn. So yeah, we'll go ahead and officially begin at 10 as we wait for maybe others to join. But we're recording this also, so you'll be able to get the replay. So yes, I'm David Burden, and I will be him for the remainder of the hour. After that, it could be anybody, probably Dame Shirley, probably. But other than that, we are good to go. Also, for those of you that have joined, please check with on our website let me put that in the chat so you can see what our website is, so that you can go and get the materials that we're using for today. OlympicChangePartners.com is our website. And I'll just also show you my email address if anybody wants to reach out to me with any questions about the program today. This Resilience Unleashed is one of 3 modules in our 3-module masterclass called Unbreakable. Unbreakable is an interesting way of describing human nature right now. Thank you, Nick, for putting that in the chat. There are a lot of things going on today. Some of them are happy things, some of them less so. We do know that there are a lot of people who are having a lot of issues right now. And this program and all of its contents and all of the research has been designed to provide people with tips and tools to be able to deal with uncertainty and deal with the thoughts and emotions and feelings and behaviors that are probably understandable because of where we're now, but also at the same time don't help us move our lives forward. We really believe in thriving. Surviving, I get that, and certainly we all want to do that too, but thriving has more of a sense of happiness, fulfillment, learning new things, being connected with people. And that's really the kind of life that we are looking to achieve with the whole concept of resilience. So I'm going to hold off another 3 minutes before we go any further and have a sip of my delicious coffee. I won't say the name of the brand because we're not getting paid to do that. So there's that. Take that, company. And so very good. Yeah, the recording will start at, yeah, it is delicious. Yes, it is delicious. Not that anyone should care about this but me, but I do like I like to, when my coffee's in the French press, getting nice and strong, what I like to do is take my big coffee cup and I put the cream and the honey in the bottom, and I have a frother, and I get it really frothy, and then I pour the coffee on top. So there, now you know a little bit about me and my insanity. There you go. So, and here I am larger, and here's my large coffee cup, and we're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Yeah, today is the 25th of September, which means that Halloween is just a little bit of, maybe about a month or so away. And then we're going to be smack into the holiday season, which, people, a lot of them say they can take it or leave it. But I love that we're doing this program at the last portion of the year where people would typically be writing New Year's resolutions or doing something like that, because I don't make New Year's resolutions, I make plans. Another phrase that I'm very fond of using is training, not trying. So being able to use the techniques that we're going to be providing in these programs, this is going to be a great way to not only end the year, but to start a new year in a manner and in a way that is just going to bring strength and clarity, and hopefully not be filled with so much anxiety, fear, and depression. So it is straight up now at the 10 o'clock hour, and I want to introduce myself. I'm David Burden of Olympic Change Partners, and one of my partners, Nick Nortelli, is in the chat moderating our discussion today. And this first of 3 is referred to as your secret weapon, thriving during change and uncertainty. I like the idea and the phrase, your secret weapon. I don't know who out there still, has respect for learning institutions and hospitals. I know I do. Being a former hospital administrator, I can tell you I appreciate their knowledge and research efforts very much. And according to them, as of today, there's 1 in 4 people who actually have resilience at a level where it keeps them just outside the realm of being depressed and anxious and worried, and keeps them more in the yard where we're strategizing, making plans, and letting our brains and minds and emotions work for us. So it's an interesting set of circumstances here. So when we think about resilience and we want to define it, you can define resilience in a variety of ways. I have to say that my definition has been informed by recent world events and recent events within the United States, recent events within my own life. So I do refer to resilience as being a superpower because not everyone has it. This superpower allows us to not be overrun and overwhelmed by external things. We are aware of external things. We feel those external things, but we also are aware that we can't let what's going on outside affect what's going on inside us. You know, how many people are resilient? 1 in 4 in this country. 1 in 4 in this country. 1 in 4. Um, I think that number presents an opportunity for us. I think that number says that there's room for growth. There's room for developing inner strength. When we think about 1 in 4 people having resilience at a level that keeps their lives in more of a responsive position as opposed to reactive, one of the things that I sort of think about is the huge numbers of people in America, according to the APA, who are dealing with anxiety and depression. That number has grown so significantly, probably because of COVID. COVID had a really big hand in driving the numbers up of people who sought care. Also, it's important to state here, and I'm not going to say this again because it's kind of a downer, but nearly 1 million people across the world committed suicide last year, and in the United States 50,000 of that number committed suicide. So resilience plays a key role in how we see ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about our lives, our futures, and how we feel and what relationship we have with hope. I mentioned here, resilience is an inner strength that allows us to recover from setbacks and adapt no matter what the obstacles are. I love the idea that resilience can transform a person from looking at the circumstances around their lives and internalizing them and becoming a victim and falling prey to a variety of mental health issues and just general feelings that put you in the driver's seat of your life. I love the idea that resilience is a foundation. Resilience is a verb and it's also a noun. As a noun, it is a foundation on which we can build a life where we see opportunity, where we overcome our personal challenges, where we connect with other people, where we are aware of what behaviors, thoughts, habits are helping us or hurting us, as a foundation for flourishing in every aspect of our lives. And I have to tell you, I know a lot about resilience. Some people, I've had friends now over 40 years because I don't know, I'm about 1,000 years old. So there are a lot of people that I have known. They said, "Oh, David, you've always been like that." Well, that may have been me presenting that, but that was not the way that I felt. So for good or bad, or however it may be for you, you'll probably learn a little bit more about my journey of resilience through my life. So I want to just highlight here what's coming up and what we're doing today. So today we're learning about how resilience can be a secret weapon. Chaos is everywhere. We're receiving information from more places than we ever have. There was a time in my youth where when the evening news went off at 6 o'clock, that was the end of it. Now it's just the beginning of it with social media and smartphones and all the rest. We've got to be able to create some sort of an understanding of what resilience is in a chaotic environment and one that's rife with uncertainty. We also, as part of our secret weapon for thriving, we need to figure out, what do I want? What is my plan for moving forward? Because that is the opposite of sitting and receiving information every hour, every day, every week about what's going on in the world. You can take that information in, but if it's not going to be something that will feed the plan that you have for your life, then you've got decisions to make. The next module, which we'll be doing on the 1st, same time, is about our brains and how our brains operate when we're resilient and how our brains operate when we don't. This is an opportunity to learn about things like, I can't believe every thought I have. At what point do my thoughts become beliefs? How many times do I need to think the same thing over and over again before I, A, believe it, and B, it becomes a habit that whenever I interact with this particular situation or circumstance, I immediately internalize it, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So the supercharged brain is going to be the second module that we're going to be taking a look at. And then module 3 on the 9th, we're going to be talking about how in the world do I live in an unbreakable manner in a world such as we have right now. And we'll be looking at specific circumstances and events that are going on and looking at them through the lens of resilience. And I want to just thank all of you for your comments in the chat feature. Those are wonderful. I'll be looking at them and responding in kind in just a bit. But look, there's a lot of, so I don't want to tell you that I'm not Julie Andrews and talking about a spoonful of sugar here. I am well aware of what the world looks like today. And I have to say, too, that there are some stark and cold realities. Just Monday, we learned about some new things going on in the tech industry, which frankly, we thought that was just a license to print money. And now we're looking at some changes going on with them and them reducing their staff numbers and all of that. And I know people who have been looking for work and who are out of work. I know people who are employed, but they are underemployed. I know people that are living in parts of the country that are at war right now. I know people that are in rough relationships, people who are burned out, people who are worried about environmental disasters, fires and earthquakes. I live in Nevada, not that far from California. Certainly, I've lived in California many years, but now there do seem to be more and more things going on, not just in California, but everywhere. Social media has had an impact on our lives. The word or the phrase doom scrolling, has become part of our vocabulary. Doom scrolling, when we're sitting on and just looking at the phone and scrolling, and the next thing you know, 4 hours has passed and you've become unhinged. Because the thing I find so interesting about social media, just for a second, is how I can be looking at maybe little cats or dogs, and who doesn't love looking at that? I can be looking at Harry Winston jewelry, or I can be looking at images of Dame Shirley. And then all of a sudden, without me doing anything, there are images and short video clips showing me things that are very upsetting. But because I've already been in the habit of scrolling, looking at the things I like, as these things I don't like show up, how much control do I really have with that? Now, I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, that's enough. Other people don't. I've even learned also that there's a lady, I think her name is Dora. Somebody wrote me and said, have you seen this lady that shows up on your social media feeds where she says, have you been scrolling longer than an hour? You need to turn your phone off and do this or that. I mean, this is the world we live in. And yes, AI, the advent of artificial intelligence, we thought that the world had turned on its axis when the internet was in full usage. AI, people still don't really know quite how to coexist with that. We've done programs from Olympic Change Partners on AI. We've done some for universities and organizations, big ones. on how to integrate AI and how to lead a group of people that are using that tool. So we've kind of got, our hands in that. But it's still so interesting to me how there are people for whom AI is all or nothing. It's either, I don't know, what is that? I don't know, to, oh my gosh, it's going to take over the world and we're all going to be out of work and living under a bridge. Well, I enjoy a good piece of hyperbole like the next person, but I think AI is something that, again, a resilient mind is a mind that is responsive, not reactive. So you learn about it like you would learn about any challenge or something new coming into your life. You learn about it. You learn how you can use this, how this can benefit me. You incorporate it and you just sort of move on. I'm noticing here that doing the live and working in the platform, it's sort of thrown off some of the aesthetic aspects of my presentation. I apologize for that. But if you download the copies of the presentation, a resilience assessment, a resilience worksheet, and a resilience action plan, I can guarantee you that those are in pristine aesthetic condition. So I want to just highlight a few of what I feel are the pillars of unbreakable resilience. Now, everybody, if you go to the Resilience Institute, the School of Behavioral Health at UCLA, everybody's got their own version. But for me, for David, the most important pillar of resilience is being able to understand that bouncing forward is the way. I've done thousands of resilience classes. I've worked throughout the state of California at every level. I've worked at so many public and private hospitals in California and here in Nevada. I've done workshops in every conceivable industry. And every time you ask someone to define resilience, they always refer to it as bouncing back. I don't know if it's just from me being from Detroit. That doesn't sound like a good idea. Something happened and I'm going back to the spot where that happened. How can that be good for me? But at any rate, bouncing forward, and I'm going to explain that fully in just a bit, the development of internal strength. Now, that phrase, nothing new there, no shock there, nothing really alarming with that phrase. But I will tell you, it's very hard to have internal strength if you are externally driven and externally motivated. My internal strength is going to be the same no matter what is going on out there. Because again, I believe in training, not trying. I train for resilience. I train for overcoming adversity. And that begins the internal strength process we'll be talking about throughout the remainder of our time today. Connection is another thing. We learned a lot about connection, or the lack of it, during COVID, right? So what happened during COVID? A lot of people went to work, were told to go home. They were given a laptop, that was the end of it, and they stayed home. Now people don't want to leave their homes, but that's another webinar. When we think about connection, it's important to recognize a variety of things. One of them is the Surgeon General for the United States of America has said that the pandemic we're currently in right now is one of isolation. Men are more isolated than women for some reason, probably because the nature of our relationships are different gender to gender. But there's also a lot that we miss out on. Is there a relationship between our ability to connect? And I don't mean just connect with anybody, not the dismal Lizzies or your great Aunt Miriams of the world that always call you up at night and tell you how bad the world is. I'm talking about connecting with people that make you feel strong, that make you hopeful, that say, you know what, you've got this. Remember, you did this a couple years ago. This happened and you were just fine. Look, here's what you do. Connecting with those people. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then getting into action. And that's why that circle is red. So at the end to action, we've got to start, and we've got to start today. So when we think about bouncing forward, I want you to think about what needs to change for us. And I know that learning new things, part of the adult learning theory for adults is that we learn new things in conjunction with what we already know. I'm just going to tell you right now, this may or may not work in this particular context. Yes, we did fall into patterns of isolation during COVID. There were people, and I was doing probably 5 hours of webinars a day during COVID. I was amazed at the number of people who never got dressed. Now, just as an aside, in my little editorial comment, I have to tell you that the first 5 minutes of your day and the last 5 minutes of your day is when your brain is the most receptive to almost anything. So, how do you want to set your day up? What are you looking at in terms of tasks and things you want to accomplish? Accomplishments with respect to doing something for your body, doing something for your spirit, doing something for your mind, making the bed, for crying out loud, because sometimes that's the first accomplishment we can have before even leaving the bedroom, and getting up and getting dressed and all of that. So, and then the last 5 minutes of the day are around gratitude. These are some of the lesser visible aspects of being a resilient person. When I mentioned also about the phrase bouncing back, because so many people say, oh, it's bouncing back, it's bouncing back. I put that phrase in the same area that I put when people say, oh, I guess this is the new normal. And I'm like, I can't put my finger on that, but I have to say that does not sound good. So we're in a bad situation and we just accept that as normal. I have problems with that. So bouncing forward refers to our ability to not only recover from circumstances that might be considered adverse or challenging, whatever it might be, but to become stronger because we learn new things. We associate and collaborate more strongly with other strong, resilient people. We learn from mistakes. We don't wallow in them, and we make a plan, and we get to getting and move on down the road. Now, this is different than bouncing back because that implies we're just going to return back to a previous state. We're focusing less on the transformation process. We're focusing less on doing anything beyond what the existing challenge is. So imagine something horrible has happened, it passes, and you say, well, gosh, I'm glad that's over now. I have helped out a lot of people in my life, and I'm really super old, so that's a lot of people. And people will say, David, even if the whole place burned down, you would be the guy that I'd call, because you would say something along the lines of, well, yeah, that did all burn down. But, I think we learned something from this, and I've got an idea. That's just the way we have to be today. We have to be able to pivot and let go, unlearn, learn new things. That's all part of the bouncing forward. I think that's exciting, because if you're not doing that, what are you doing? If you're not doing that, what are you doing? Now, I will tell you that it requires work. Resilience doesn't just come to me on my sofa watching a rerun of the Golden Girls. I'm going to have to do some work. I'm going to need to always monitor my perspective and view challenges and things as opportunities instead of looking at every new thing, every new challenge that comes as a problem or a setback. AI is not a setback. The condition that the United States of America globally, that might be a setback. But for me personally, I'm like, how do I make this work for me? Are there parts of what is going on today that might work for me? I need to also just swallow a really big pill that says sometimes things are just inevitable. And if I want to continue on my merry way with a sense of humor, looking great, which I do, I just caught a glimpse of myself in the camera. If I want to have these things, I'm going to need to be able to have a mindset that says, what are we doing today? What's it going to be today? I also need to be able to reframe the thoughts that I'm thinking, because every thought we have is not a fact. And we should not be believing every thought that we have. It's important to recognize unhelpful thought patterns and replace them with constructive ones. It's important to focus on what can be gained from rolling your sleeves up, putting your hands in this situation, and really making it work, as opposed to being solely fixated on, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. Yes, every thought we have is not a fact. Now, we hear a lot about emotional regulation and understanding our emotions, and that being a tool to help us manage stress and cultivate emotional resilience. How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that? Those are great words, and they may make sense to some people, but I have to tell you, in the work that I've done around the United States and at hospitals and with groups and that, is when we understand what emotions really are. And we've got a lot of emotions, but there's 8 basic emotions, and they're basic because these are the emotions that the majority of people cycle through: anger, fear, pain, joy, passion, love, shame, and guilt. Now, we don't often know how to appropriately title each one unless it's anger or love. We certainly understand those two things. But one of the things that's important is being able to say, why am I having such a big reaction to this news story, this social media post, this sentence that someone used? Why am I having such a big reaction to that? Because this now begins the shift in being reactive and just reacting to that emotion, to turning and saying, wait a minute, why am I having such a big reaction to this? And is this going to help me? I had the experience of being at many airports, but one in particular where there was some bad weather all around. And it was amazing to me, the number of passengers that were just screaming and berating and using really ugly language at the gate agents. And I thought, well, if you're trying to get information from somebody, is cursing them out really going to be a catalyst for that? So, you walk up to the lady, and I said to her, this must just be awful for you. I've stood here in line and you've been cursed out by 3 or 4 people, and some called you out of your name. This is terrible. And she just looked at me and she said, I feel like I'm a little dead on the inside. I'm like, well, that's just terrible. But when you have the ability to regulate your emotions and name them and understand where they're coming from, it not only helps you feel better inside yourself, reducing your anxiety and fear and just the negativity that we get, but it's also a great way of being able to understand what other people are experiencing. And as a result of that, I have to tell you, I got information from the gate agents other people did not get. So, if I want something from someone, what's the best way of getting it? If I want something from life, or I want something out of myself, what's the best way for me to get it? Am I going to get it by telling myself, you never do this right? And using phrases that imply for myself, I don't have any self-confidence, no self-respect, because, all the way back to your mother, she didn't, oh my goodness, we can press pause on a lot of that. What story am I telling myself about this emotion that's triggered this thought? Is it true? Often it isn't, but we'll get more into that in the second module, because our thoughts can help or hurt us in a major, major way. I also believe, and the research shows, that resilient people are always looking at what their resources are. They define the issue to the extent they can, and then they're looking at what strengths do I have that can be applied to this? What skills might I be a little light in? And how can I sort of plug that hole through a collaboration with someone? Who can help us? What opportunities for growth are there here? And as an example of that, there are a lot of people who became unemployed during COVID, and they sort of did a self-assessment, and created like a bit of a roadmap for where they've worked and what skills they've learned and what their interests were. And what it came to was a nexus where they thought to themselves, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to do these things that my life has been sort of feeding me the experience for all along. So this is what resilient people do. We plan and we create, as opposed to relishing in what's going badly. What happened? Oh, it's going to be even worse tomorrow. Or what's going to happen now? Those kinds of people. One of the other interesting things, and harder actually things to do, one of the benefits of getting older is a lot of stuff. And knowing a lot of stuff is great for perspective, but it can often get in the way of learning new things because we not only want to use the previous knowledge and apply it to the new application, program, whatever it might be, but sometimes we fall into this space where we begin to compare and say, oh, well, this was better back then. And well, you know what? Depending on how old you are, everything was better back then. I don't believe that, but that's what some people believe. Nothing good has happened since Harry Truman left office, I've often heard. Well, that's a perspective issue. And when we think about that, we have to say, you know what, a perspective of being able to thrive and move forward in a world where we don't really know what's going to be what. Jobs are different. How we apply for work is different. Starting businesses, marketing businesses, getting people to work with our business, getting customers, all of that is driven by a lot of different activity today than it was 5 years ago. So when we think about learning, adopting the just reality, frankly, it's simply a reality that we're going to have to be continuous learners. Every day I try to learn something new. Sometimes I don't, but every week I learn at least 3 or 4 new things, whether it's a computer program, an application, or an app, or I've read something new. I know my partner, Nick, is tired of me saying, oh my God, I just read this new book. What book is this? And, because I'm so excited about what I learned, I just want to share it with them. But learning new things, but at the same time, I know the past was wonderful. And frankly, 1985, the golden age of disco, are you kidding me? That was just wonderful. But the reality is, I will always love disco. That's one reality. The idea is that we're going to have to unlearn some things to make room for new things. Unlearning requires us to begin understanding our belief system in terms of our beliefs that might be limited or limiting in terms of us learning new things and moving down the road, understanding things that are outdated or it's simply no longer useful, even though it's comfortable for us. This is true for apps and programs and processes. It's also true for habits and thought patterns. Oh, well, when I get up, I immediately turn on the news and get my coffee. Great. Bad news and caffeine. That sounds like a great way to begin the day. That's a judgment and an opinion. I'm sorry if that's offensive, but the truth of the matter is there's something called power habits. There's actions that David's book club. There are things that we do that set our day up in a way that we feel empowered. And yes, I can do this. Yes, this is going to be great. And then there are ways of starting the day where we're already starting with the butterflies in our stomach because we feel like something bad is going to happen. I cannot make a specific list for you on things that need to be learned and things that need to be unlearned. I will tell you that the process of letting go is it's critical in the process of resilience and the moving of your life forward. And you're never too old. It's never too late. You don't need to have a PhD, a master's degree. None of the standard categories of people matter when we're talking about this. The power of learning is central to our ability to problem solve, critically think, move forward, and manage ourselves. That's what Unbreakable is made from. That's what Unbreakable is made from. Unlearning. And so I don't go around saying, oh, well, I'm unlearning this, or I'm in a meeting somewhere, oh, I guess I have to unlearn. No, I don't go, because they would think I was crazy, and then I'd open my mouth and confirm it, I guess. But normally what I say is, wow, this is very different from what my understanding has been. Help me understand this a little bit better, and just move on with that, because increasingly a lot of our groups, our collaborative groups and our social groups and book clubs and that, we're made up of multi-generations, and also multicultural. So there's always something that needs to be learned. And when you're dealing with people, a lot of people have opinions and judgments about what other people are and how they behave, because we're living in quite a divisive time. When we unlearn what we were told about others, from the past, that's when you can really hear the engine of your unbreakable spirit really revving up, ready to take you to places you've never been. And I am a testimony to that. So, some key aspects I want you to hear when you think of David Burden and you think about this program. I want you to hear the following things from me in my voice to say to you. First, growth-oriented perspective. Am I moving forward? Am I standing still? Why? Am I going backwards? Why? Sometimes those moves back are not within our control. I understand that. That doesn't mean we stop. Having a growth-oriented perspective means that no matter what is going on, you're thinking, assessing, strategizing, and taking care of yourself. Reframing is critical. There's always another way of looking at a situation, whether it's social, dating, a team meeting, an interaction between a boss and an employee. There's always a way of reconstructing that narrative so that we can focus on progress instead of, well, they walked into the meeting and didn't even look at me. Or how come that one's talking to this person and not talking to me? We could go on and on with examples of that, couldn't we? Reframing. And I will admit, sometimes things happen and I'm not able to reframe it. So I start dialing up my close circle of friends, which is very small. And I say, you know what? I really need you to help me find another way of looking at this situation. And bada boom, bada bing, Bob's your uncle, and we can find that. Being able to emotionally regulate myself has been one of the chief aspects of resilience that has provided me with the largest amount of dividends. Being able to regulate myself has allowed me to say, wait a minute, why am I feeling this? Where is this coming from? Is this coming from my past, or is it just that person? What story am I making up about this? What do I believe about this? Am I believing this negative story? Is this something that I need to act on, or is this something that just pressed a button? Because I don't need to respond to everything. People that have emotional regulation can look at someone who's yelling and screaming and saying a lot of foul things, and they just, okay. Well, is there anything else? All right, I'll see you later. As opposed to, you can't talk to me like that. You have to respect me. And really, not having any emotional regulation at all and simply jumping in and rolling your sleeves up and starting the boxing match. Why am I feeling this? What would I prefer to be feeling? If in the emotional rate, if something happens and I'm feeling very insecure or very fearful, I'm like, wait a minute, is this a legitimate concern? Do I have a right to feel this way? David, you really don't. Look, your mind works a little differently, and this is kind of where this is coming from. So no, there's no risk to you right now, so we can reframe this. There's no shortage of examples of where emotional regulation is not a tool for effective application of resilience. Being able to stay balanced, emotionally balanced and focused. And focus right now is, and attention spans are challenging, but emotional resilience and emotional regulation go hand in hand. Resourcefulness is an aspect of bouncing forward. One of the things that many of us have felt, and I know I count myself in that number, is the feeling that I've got to do this by myself. I've got to do this by myself. I'm all alone. And of course, that can go back to your childhood experiences. It could simply go back to COVID when we were all locked down. The reality is that we are not all alone, and that no one is ever really all alone, and that there's always resources for something. The reality is that you have to have a perspective of unlearning and learning to be able to begin the process of uncovering those resources. In the old days, we'd say, oh, don't get that one upset because she's got or he's got the right life, which meant that person's got a lot of resources, lots of numbers to call. Many of you may not know what a Rolodex is. That's okay. But I will tell you this. Artificial intelligence or ChatGPT, Bard, whatever it is you're using, has opened up a huge opportunity to find resources nationally, globally, locally, and also your cell phone with people that you enjoy talking to and that have your back. And have your back without a knife in it. That is an important, that's an important thing. Bouncing forward is a better path. We can plan and position ourselves to be in a better place than where we are. I was just thinking about, and as a kid growing up in the Midwest, there was a phrase that some people would say, we're going to get this done or we're going to die trying. And those phrases kind of come back to me periodically when I think about resilience, and I think about all the things I'm doing, exercising or not exercising, eating healthy or not eating healthy, reading an hour every day or not reading an hour every day, going to bed at a reasonable time, getting up at a reasonable time. I look at all the things I do through the lens of, is this helping me or is it hurting me? I've already lived a life that was sort of blind to the impact of my habits. Living a life that was blind to the impact of my habits caused me to have a lot of worry. Resilient people, it's not that we don't worry about things, we plan and we strategize. Doesn't make the worry completely go away, but it certainly diminishes it. Yes, we get her done. We get her done. And then the learning and unlearning. And that's just something that we have to always, it is a mindset shift. And I told you that at the beginning. I want to talk a little bit about harnessing the strength of connection, because isolation is the current pandemic that we're in. People are concerned about going to public places, and I understand that. I am too. Luckily, I've had enough experience working with law enforcement and California Highway Patrol, the prisons and all of that, and going to the gym and taking my boxing lessons. I don't feel vulnerable being in public. But oftentimes you say, gosh, do I really want to do that? All of us think very differently about going out and being in company. But I'll tell you, connection and resilience are connected in ways that you just can't even imagine. The idea of it providing emotional support's a given. The idea of the perspective and feedback, maybe less so. Because I know a lot of people look at support groups as being a place where I can go and I can be understood. Well, listen, I can find somebody to help me validate the very worst of myself. I'm not looking for connection to do that for me. When I talk about perspective, I'm talking about being able to call a Nick or an Esther or any number of people and have them challenge the perspective I'm holding, as opposed to saying, oh yeah, David, you're right. It's all just terrible. Oh, did you check outside to see if the locusts have come? My folks aren't going to be telling me those types of stories. They're going to be reminding me of things I've done before. They're going to be providing me with information that could be helpful. They're going to share resources. They're going to share their knowledge. Connections, especially quality connections. I'm not talking about the dismal Lizzie and the gloomy Gus and those friends that you've just sort of kept in the mix because you've known them for 40 years. Oh, wait, that's me. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's not funny. But I'm talking about people that really add something to your life and help you stay on the track. That makes a huge difference, whether it's advice, knowledge, or just support. There's a hormone called oxytocin that is produced when it's a feel-good sort of a hormone. So, I look at a piece of jewelry or look at a little puppy or a kitten. Some people get it when they look at babies. Oh, well, there is an actual hormone that gets released when we do that. Positive quality connections, I know the word toxic is very in right now. Toxic people who don't add value, they may get less time as you begin to move toward a plan for your resilience. When you're connecting with the right people, whether you realize it or not, oxytocin is being released to help reduce the stress that cortisol helps to create. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And the bonding hormone doesn't just make us feel good, it strengthens our brain's ability to manage stress. You've got to be kidding me with this. Just by connecting with the right people? Yeah. I remember my dad telling me, you need to be very careful about the company you keep. Who knew, Dad? A million years later, and here we are. The cognitive reframing and the perspective shifting is something that we are able to achieve when we are connecting with people. Our mental flexibility begins to really become obvious. So, I want you to take a look. We've talked about a lot of things today, and resilience is a topic that I am very passionate about. I've worked in government service for years. I've always been tied to some hospital, some volunteer program. I'm always involved in the mental health and wellness of people. I've always been a part of EAP programs that pick a company, pick a state government. So I'm just invested in helping people make their lives the best place it can be. And I'll tell you, the more I help people make their lives the best place it can be, the better my life gets. So it's like a circle. So these next two slides have to do with just some actions that I want to drop into your mind to be able to think about and ponder and begin sort of acting on. One is to assess your current level of resilience. And listen, it's okay no matter where you are. The self-assessment is excellent. It gives us a starting point to know where our growth is, and because you can measure resilience. It's not just some pie in the sky feel good thing. You can actually measure it, and the assessment that we have as part of this module will really help you evaluate where you are. And don't worry, if your scores are high, there's actions that need to be done to sustain that. If your results are low, we also, the tool provides action steps to help increase that. Identify the things that are stressors and challenges for you, as opposed to just swallowing them and digesting them as being normal. List them, whether they're personal, professional, money, whatever it might be. List them, get them out, because if they're only in here, as opposed to external from you on a notepad or in a discussion with someone, your actions are limited. So identify those things, write them down. How do you feel about this? What are some things that can be done? Set some clear goals for resilience. The first 5, the last 5. What are you doing the first 5 minutes of your morning? What are you doing the last 5 minutes of your morning? How are you prioritizing what you're doing to feel accomplished by the end of the day? Set some clear resilience goals. And if you're finding that you're angry a lot, or you're sad a lot, or you're afraid a lot, write those things down. Push back on those things. Question them. Why am I feeling this? What happened? How often do I feel this? Someone just wrote first five, last five, the magic minutes. Well, they're magic at my house. They're definitely magic at my house. I really enjoy. I had a mother-in-law years ago. She was a delightful woman. She came up missing after she said this to me. She asked me one time, she said, David, do you ever get on your own nerves? And this was before I really understood. I was in my 20s at the time. And I thought, wow, emotional regulation? No, I didn't have any. Clear resilience goals? No, didn't have any. Understanding what my stressors were? No, I just walked around the entire time without really any connection with myself. And as a result of that, my world reflected that. So, what are you feeling? Why? Is it legitimate? Is it not? Is it a trigger from something that happened in the past? What is it? What is it? It's important to sort of take a look at that. Strengthen quality social connections. Someone wrote, you know what? There are people, we don't necessarily need to cut them out. So those of you watching this, you don't need to feel compelled to make a list of people and call them up. Well, this crazy guy on the internet today said, you are toxic and we need to not talk anymore. I'm not suggesting that. But how do you feel at the end of that conversation? Do you feel enlightened? Do you feel empowered? Or do you feel... Well, I am from Detroit, and a lot of people came up missing during the 80s. Yes. At any rate, what are the connections that make you feel like, yes, I've got this. Yes, I can do this. Yes, I can move on. Versus those connections that we have where we end up feeling badly. We end up feeling like hope is elusive. We end up feeling like the stressors and the circumstances that we're in right now are just going to be our new normal. Oh my gosh, I hate that phrase so much. Do a SWOT assessment on yourself, strengths and weaknesses, and be able to say, this weakness isn't really a weakness because I really don't care that much about that. My strengths are this and that. I enjoy that. Now I can make a plan to do these new things. Building personal strengths and leveraging those is a hallmark of resilience. We don't sit around and berate ourselves for not being able to conduct brain surgery. But what we do is we say, gosh, I'm strong in these areas and I can apply these strengths to, and then you can create a list of those things. Self-care, I have to tell you, is very critical. However, taking care of your body in whatever way that means to you. I would just say at a minimum, exercise and food and rest play a very big role in that. What am I doing to take care of my mind? Do I have people who love me, respect me, care for me that I can speak with and have a connection with? Am I reading new information? A lot of folks are not reading anymore, according to the research. And that's challenging because where are you getting your information from if you're not reading it and taking it in on your own volition? Is it just being teed up for you from your cell phone or from your laptop or from an app? Implement some new learning practices. Make some goals for yourself about what you'd like to learn next, and monitor your progress. Rome wasn't built in a day, and this is not an opportunity for you to say, oh, I didn't do my reading today, or I didn't do my run today. Well, you know what? That's fine. You can do it tomorrow. Just for the sake of letting you know where a lot of this information came from. Yes, much of it comes from my experience, but for the writing of this first module, these were the places that the data came from. Stanford has a wonderful behavioral health and wellness school, as does UCLA. The APA and Psychology Today are extraordinary resources, as is the Resilience Institute in Irvine, California. So those are all wonderful resources, and you'll have a copy of the presentation so you can Google them and go to their sites and find more information if you're inclined to do so. I want to remind you that on the 1st, we're going to be doing Module 2, the supercharged brain, how resilience powers your future. We're going to be talking about the neurological process of resilience building, the role of stress when it comes to recovery and brain health. We're going to learn techniques to strengthen mental resilience. We're going to do a lot of really fun topics that are going to be able to help you in your journey of developing resilience. You know, there was a book that was written many, many years ago. It was called Peaks and Valleys by Dr. Spencer Johnson. None of you are old enough to remember who he is. But the path out of the valley appears when you choose to see things differently. And I just have to tell you that resilience is all about your perspective. You know, it's not just about bouncing back. It's rising higher each time and forging new strength from struggle and wisdom and challenge. It becomes a quiet force that transforms our lives into a place where we're not fear-based, we're not reactive, we're responsive, and we feel good in our minds and bodies. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. Please feel free to go to olympicchangepartners.com to download the information that we have reviewed for you today in our program. I also am going to include my email address here. Of course, I'm not Nick, but you can email Nick at olympicchangepartners.com, and we will absolutely get you the information that you need. We are so excited about our new venture with Olympic Change Partners and being able to help individuals and organizations become more resilient no matter what is going on in the world, in our country, or in our cities, counties, or just in our homes. You know, resilience is the answer to health, mental well-being, and to strengthen our lives. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.